Southampton are phenomenal. Russell Martin is phenomenal. But how have they gone from 5-0 losses to Sunderland to now being the most informed side in the whole of the Championship? Well, in today's video, we're going to look at and break down just how good Russell Martin's Southampton side really are. Now, at the start of the season, things really weren't brilliant. There was a few losses, a few fans doubting the manager because the system wasn't really clicking, and as a result, there was kind of sort of this negative feel around the club. I think obviously coming down from the Premier League and then not starting the Championship how you would have expected was obviously a massive knock on the confidence of the fan base. But I think Russell Martin had a few reasons for why Southampton had the rough start that they did. There was a few injuries in the squad going into the start of the season, and a few players that personally I feel just didn't really understand the system yet. It was obviously such a big shift from what they had in the Premier League to now being in the Championship with a manager with an entirely different philosophy. And as a result of these big changes, it took a fair bit of time for the Saints players to get used to the ex-Swansea gaffer. I mean, if we just compare the average positions of players from the game against Middlesbrough all the way back in September and the game from this past weekend against Sheffield Wednesday, I think you see a massive difference in positions that players are deciding to pick up. Moving on though, and onto a specific position in this side, and for me, I want to start off with what might actually be the most important position on the pitch in terms of a Russell Martin system, and it's that number 6 role. Flynn Downs facilitates practically everything Southampton want to do, and specifically everything that they do very well. Whether it be actually receiving the ball deep in the first phase with him averaging 93.66 touches per 90, or winning the ball in advanced areas, sitting in the top 25% of Championship midfielders for possessions won in the final third, and in the top 14% for interceptions per 90, Downs does it all. However, alongside these very impressive statistics, his 94% pass accuracy, lack of red cards, all of that jazz, for me, and I'm sure a lot of Saint fans will probably agree, or at least I hope so, his positional awareness is probably the best part of his game, and it's why he's so good at breaking up play. Martin deploys 2 number 8s that really do like to pick up the ball in the half spaces and in the pockets and create numerical advantages on either one of the flanks. We know the likes of Ryan Manning and Kyle Walker-Peters can both perform very well in the final third, or in the attacking kind of aspect of the game as a whole, and that means that when you've got both fullbacks that can access these high areas, then you've also got the advanced midfielders pushing on to again create numerical advantages with wingers that have fluid and dynamic movement. The job for the opposition's fullback is absolutely impossible to deal with, specifically with the quality that Southampton have. I mean, if we just look at this frame here, and you see Adam Armstrong is actually deeper than the number 8 in Will Smallbone, and you can see that poor Sheffield Wednesday wide man Gassama is just left in no man's land trying to defend almost 3 players by himself. Moving on though, and on the topic of wide players, I want to touch on a player that for me is truly a level above the Championship standard, and I know that's something that we should probably be expecting from Southampton. They're a newly relegated side, you expect them to have at least a few players with this quality, but honestly, Kyle Walker-Peters is a different class. When Southampton went down, I was pretty confident that we wouldn't see Walker-Peters in the Championship any longer than we saw Nathan Tella. But due to the model that the Saints are trying to establish and the money that they did bring in last summer, they didn't need to sell him. And I'm sure Russell Martin thanks the Lord for that every single day. Walker-Peters has operated in a couple different ways this season, and I suppose that's a credit to the type of player that he is and the quality that he possesses. I mean, he can do pretty much everything because of how well-rounded he is as a player. Looking back at previous games and looking back at Kyle Walker-Peters' heat map in the first game of the season, you kind of see that he was inverting a lot more often, and again, as you see by the heat map, was positioning himself in almost the half spaces when going forward. Whereas now he sits very wide, and we see him act as the widest player on that right-hand side to allow the right-sided forward to come either more central or receive the ball in build-up, as Adam Armstrong typically does to a very, very high standard. But outside, being able to perform the role of this kind of hybrid attacking fullback who contributes in so many different phases, what are the individual qualities that Walker Peters brings to a side? Well, this season he's completed the most successful dribbles of any championship fullback, had more touches than any other championship fullback, and won more fouls than any other, you guessed it, championship fullback. So I suppose we can really say that Walker Peters is absolutely massive in an attacking sense to the way that Southampton want to play. But he's also pretty integral defensively, and as I said before, that's another comment on just how well-rounded of a player that he really is. This season he's averaging a 75% tackle win rate, is sitting in the top 12% of championship fullbacks for blocks per 90, and wins 6.3 duels per 90 as well. So for me, and I can't stress this enough, Kyle Walker-Peters is a player that I 100,000% see play in the Premier League this season, and if Southampton don't go up, I can 100% see someone buying him, because this lad is different gravy. Moving on though, I want to look at Southampton as a whole, as almost an entire unit, just to kind of appreciate the job that Martin is doing. As you would expect from a Russell Martin side, they average the most possession per game in the championship this season, but they're also performing in the final third as well. No team has had as many touches in the opposition's box as Southampton this season, and they've also created the third highest XG in the league, and as a result of that, have scored the second most goals per match. So I think if you look at that, you really kind of get the grips with the fact that Southampton are producing to an incredibly high standard. Therefore, I want to take a little look at a star man, a star player in this setup, and it is Adam Armstrong. Armstrong has been pretty adaptable this season. We've seen him operate as that centre forward, which is kind of the role that I want to take a closer look at a little bit later on, but he's also operated as a number 8. I know at Plymouth earlier in the season he was a number 8. We've also seen him operate on either of the flanks, and yet he seems to always and consistently perform to such a high standard. From an XG of 12.4, Armstrong has scored 14 goals and has also recorded 11 assists, meaning he's on 25 goal contributions in just 27 games, which is just absolutely absurd, especially when you consider the fact that when he's actually playing up top, he's not your traditional number 9. He floats into the channels, into the pockets, creates space for the wide men, as we've touched on before, and just kind of has a very dynamic role, and his movement is almost entirely fluid, as his heat map against Coventry does suggest. Again, he's kind of another player who contributes more so than just their specific position, because he's very, very well rounded. He's putting out a high number of chances created, averaging 7.1 touches in the opposition's penalty box per 90, and scoring goals for fun, all whilst maintaining this fluid kind of rotation between the midfield and the attacking areas. I know a few Southampton fans didn't necessarily see the best from last season, and whether or not he's good enough for the Premier League is a matter for a completely different day, but there's no denying Adam Armstrong truly is one of the best players in the Championship, by a decent margin as well. He's got to be in that top 5 debate for me. Now to go to the opposite side of the pitch though, and someone that we've spoken about before on this channel, it's centre-half loanee Taylor Harwood-Bellis. I know we've done it a few times now with a few different players in this video, but I want to look at Harwood-Bellis' heat map, because I think it massively tells you the type of player he is and the influence he's had on this side. As we all know by now, when you play your high possession based football, you do then often require to have a high defensive line in order to minimise that gap that you get between the defence, midfield and forward front 3. But then a problem with that is you require aggressive, tenacious, strong in first duels centre halves who are also still competent in possession and can play you out of good pressing teams with that pressing trigger, which really does make it almost impossible at times to break through, unless you've got players that are elite on the ball. And at this level, we all know by now, Harwood-Bellis is one of the best players that you can get in terms of actually being on the ball and finding that balance between strong defensive attributes as well. His heat map really does suggest that he contributes massively in terms of covering wide spaces and allowing the two fullbacks to do their job of contributing in an attacking sense. Yet he also averages 5.14 progressive passes per 90 and sits in the top 1 percentile of centre half in Europe's other 14 leagues for passes attempted as well. So as we saw last season at Burnley, he's pretty much the full package as a centre half in the modern day. But with that, he's also a born leader, which you definitely need to escape the absolute monster that is the EFL Championship. And that's really emphasised for me by the fact that despite only having 2 clean sheets in their first 17 league games, Southampton now actually have the joint 7th most clean sheets in the whole division. Showing that over time, Martin's learned. We've seen adaptations from, at times early in the season, we saw Holgate at right back, and obviously Harwood Bellis was embedded into the squad. Now that obviously the fully fit and the best 11 is out there, we're starting to see Southampton just sharpen up all across the pitch now. Now though, that's my sort of take on the whole situation with Southampton, the development that we've seen over the last few months, specifically on field anyway. If you have enjoyed, then please leave a like and subscribe. I know we've got a fair few Southampton fans on this channel, and I absolutely love doing videos about the Saints. So if you have enjoyed, as I said, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.